All right, good evening. First, I want to say a very big thank you to Congressman Robert Pittinger and the Romanian Parliament for the invitation. I also want to thank Anne Basham for putting us together on this task force and working closely together. I remember last year when we met in Budapest, I showed interest in human trafficking, and we got in touch, and it's been a wonderful story to tell. I mean, today in Ghana, have been a voice on human trafficking, putting together parliamentarians, who are also interested in the field. We've been engaging media to raise the necessary awareness and also bringing together stakeholders in an attempt to put a stop to human trafficking. But today, I am here to bring to your attention some human trafficking activities in West Africa, the Sub-Saharan Africa. Human trafficking in Sub-Saharan Africa varies on a sub-regional basis in terms of the profiles of victims and the forms of trafficking predominantly pursued. Yet, similarities exist region-wide in terms of operations of traffickers and factors the factors contributing, such as child trafficking in Sub-Saharan Africa is significantly higher than any other region. Human trafficking within the region is heavily intertwined with terrorism, and traffickers take advantage of various push and pull factors which contribute to trafficking. Across the region, terrorism is heavily intertwined with human trafficking and other forms of organized crime. Traffickers and terrorists often capitalize on victims' desire to immigrate, and terrorists leverage control of irregular migration routes to traffic persons. Terrorists traffic persons for a myriad of reasons. One, to booster their numbers via false conscription of adult males and boys. Two, to sell on the black markets to finance their terrorism activities. Three, forced marriage and rape of trafficked women and girls by traffickers. Anne spoke about the story in Nigeria where Boko Haram is seizing a lot of a whole community and all of that. And so many other reasons. In fact, conflicts and terrorist attacks are pervasive in the region, and every sub-region has an active conflict or terror situation. This conflict displaces people, causing them to become very vulnerable to traffickers. Beyond the political reasons, some socio-economic activities or factors such as poverty, starvation, and environmental reasons push people out of their homes and make them susceptible to being trafficked or joining armed groups. West Africa is an extremely volatile region as it is home to both the Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin. The sub-region contains central crossroads in the irregular migration routes, such as the Agadez region. The sub-region has therefore become a hotbed for tourists, ergo human trafficking activities. And the region is home to groups such as Boko Haram, the Al-Jabhat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, and the Islamic State for West Africa, all competing for control in the Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin. Despite a 1.2% fall in global deaths to terrorism in 2021, the sub-region was responsible for a 17% increase in the number of terrorist attacks. An increase in terrorism-related deaths was recorded in all countries in the Sahel, save Mauritania and Chad. Political instability as a result of coups in the sub-region has motivated these groups and has weakened security alliances such as the G5 Sahel framework, which Mali recently pulled out. The sub-region, therefore, maintains the highest record of trafficked victims in the sub-region. Forced labor is the predominant form of trafficking in the sub-region, and children are the most trafficked to work in farms and fishing communities. In fact, I brought some slides and a video, and I wanted to show it, but probably maybe after the presentation we may have the opportunity to do that. But like other parts of Africa, the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war has really hit us very hard in West Africa. In fact, the combined effect of COVID, conflicts, droughts, and famines have occasioned a food crisis which has affected over 27 million people. The energy and food crisis triggered by the Russian invasion has exacerbated an already dire situation as food reserves in the region begin to dwindle. Prices of staples such as wheat have skyrocketed due to the decreased supply from Russia and Ukraine, who supply up to 50% of wheat to West African countries. Further, aid from Western sources have been redirected to cater for the Ukrainian refugees. The impact of this is dire, and the economic situation triggered by the European conflict in West Africa and the sub-Saharan region, coupled with local pressures, has created increased demand for immigration, which influences trafficking. Fears that conflict in Sahel may spill into coastal states have been realized with increased terrorist activities in Ivory Coast, Togo, and Benin. Terror groups are exploiting political turmoil in these coastal states to expand their scope and steal more resources. Traffickers are simultaneously trafficking people, especially children, to work in parts of their countries and in other places in the sub-region. Traffickers exploit freedom of movement protocols of ECOWAS to traffic people across borders. In fact, Ghana has had a very difficult history with human trafficking. Ghana remains a source, a transit point, and a destination for human trafficking. Child trafficking has been the most prevalent form of trafficking, with children being sent to coastal communities to partake in coastal fishing under hazardous conditions and on farms. Other popular forms of trafficking of children for domestic servitude and trafficking of girls from northern areas to act as porters in markets in the south. Externally, Ghanaian women are lured into Middle Eastern countries as well as other countries within the sub-region where they are subjected to forced labor and sexual abuse. Ghana has particularly been hit hard by the conflict in Ukraine after narrowly fending off contraction of the economy during the COVID-19. Soaring food and energy costs and the attendant spike in general prices has left inflation at an 18-year high of 23.6%. The government of Ghana has recently begun engagement with the IMF to support an economic program by the government. Economic pressures have deepened a demand for cheap labor and therefore a demand for child laborers. Balance of payment problems have further affected government's financial support of anti-trafficking campaigns. Economic pressures have deepened for a cheap labor. Security situations in West Africa and the threat of spillover into the coastal countries like Ghana has drawn significant government resources into boosting security capabilities. Inadequate financial resources have further affected financial support for anti-trafficking activities in West Africa. The way forward, there's a need for a cross-regional harmonization of anti-trafficking legal framework, and it's important for us to enhance cooperation between governments and businesses to address the use of forced labor in supply chains, and also to enhance the support to address vulnerabilities in societies across the region. Thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute.
Before we end